there guys, what's up? Ragtter here, welcoming you back to the Pokemon trading card game online. Today I have a new deck that I've been working on to show off for you. It focuses around GARCHOMP from the Breakpoint set, and I think it's a lot of fun because it's fast and it's aggressive, and I think it'll make for some good watching. Now, in this first game, I decided to let my opponent take the first move, because this GARCHOMP deck does rely on some special energy in order to get the most out of its damage. I'm going to play down Gible into the front slot, I've got another Gible in the back, and Trubbish waiting for Garbodor, and my opponent going to have to mulligan, and I'm going to see the Mega Rayquaza EX, which is obviously my opponent's win condition, and I'm going to see the Altaria, which is meant to protect Rayquaza, so I have a pretty good idea for what deck my opponent's running now. In the next mulligan, I don't get any information, but I do see that my opponent runs double colorless energy, which is not a surprise. In this hand, however, I'm going to see the Bronzong and a metal type energy, which tells me the main focus of my opponent's energy milling, basically. So that's how my opponent's going to get all the energy that he needs onto that Mega Rayquaza EX. Now, because of all those mulligans, I'm going to get to draw several cards, and my opponent's going to flip over in Aegislash-EX, which confirms my fears and tells me that I made a good move. Aegislash-EX will not take any damage from a Pokemon that has a special energy attached to it, like that strong energy sitting in the corner of my hand there. Normally that would boost the power of my fighting type Pokemon's attacks, in this case it's just going to hurt me. Now my hand itself is pretty good and I've got a pretty good bench set up. The point of this deck is to use as many Garchomps as you can to barrel through your opponent's defenses. These things hit hard, they get really cheap attacks, and they're very hard to stop due to a relatively moderate amount of bulk. Now my opponent gonna get Swablu into Altaria right away due to its ability, and gonna get a new hand. This is kind of concerning for me because I don't really have that draw option right now. I don't have a Sycamore or a Shauna or a Birch. So I'm kind of forced to sit with what I've got, and seeing my opponent get a completely new fresh start, it's a bit worrying. That Floatstone that my opponent put down, that's if I decide to Lysander that Bronzor up to the front and mess with my opponent by disrupting his active slot. Now since I don't have anything good to play right now, I'm going to play my Trainer's Mail, and that's going to let me get Karina. Karina is one of the best supporters in the game for fighting type Pokemon, because she'll let you go into your deck, get a fighting type Pokemon, and then get an item. With my Acrobike, I'm going to be able to draw a Professor Sycamore, though I did debate for a while on whether or not I wanted that Muscle Band more. In the end, I do decide to pick Sycamore. And now I make a misplay. I forgot that I was running a Professor's Letter in this deck, which would let me go get energy that isn't blocked by Aegislash. Instead, I played the Pokemon Fan Club. I went and got Hawlucha and Lucario EX because I felt like I might need some backup attackers. So this turn my Gible's gonna have to go without any energy, which is not good. That's a big halt to my momentum right off the get-go, but at least I've got enough Pokemon on the bench to where I feel relatively safe. My opponent gonna slap another metal type energy onto Aegislash and pass his turn from there. Now, I get another Professor Sycamore, which is really bad because one of these is going to end up wasted due to a discard. I use Karina to go get Garchomp, and then, once my deck is shuffled, I go get my Professor's Letter. But, you'll notice that I don't see it right away. I'm scanning my deck thinking, what could I possibly go for? What's going to help me in this situation? I pass by it again, and that's when I realize, oh, that's where that was. I have one of those. I can get the ball rolling. So first of all, we're going to Rare Candy, which is going to let me skip the Middle Evolution Gabite and go right to Garchomp. Then, we're going to use Professor's Letter, grab 2 Fighting type energy. We're going to slap those onto Garchomp, and we're going to start rolling out with the damage. Because I don't have any energy in my discard pile, by the way, the secondary effect of that attack is not going to kick in. But Garchomp can also power up its friends, so very strong momentum gainer there. Though Garchomp, if he attaches a metal type energy this turn, will be taking damage. Like I mentioned before, Garchomp's got a relatively decent amount of bulk, so it can take it. My opponent gonna slap down Rayquaza EX, and I'm thinking to myself, this is where things could start to get hairy as he starts to get set up more. If I don't act in the proper way, things will go poorly, and as I have these thoughts, my opponent forfeits. So we get to move into the next game, and this opponent actually had a glitched sprite, which is pretty funny. So I'm going to make the call again, I'm going to lose the call, and now it's up to my opponent, and my opponent wants me to go first this time. Now I get another pretty gosh darn good starting hand, and I debate for a second whether or not I want to lead with Gible or Lucario EX. In the end, I decide that Gible is the more aggressive play, and considering this is such an aggressive deck, I figure that's the play to go for. Now, I'm very happy to see that Darkrai EX is my opponent's starting Pokemon, and you might think, that's a Darkrai and that's a Darkrai EX. Why are you happy to see that? Because that thing is fighting weak, and once I get rolling, I'm going to steamroll that Dark type. Now I slap a strong fighting energy onto my Gible so it'll do lots of damage. I use my Trainer's Mail to go get Karina, and I'm very happy to see Karina because I could do a lot of things with these two Karina cards over the next 2 turns. I'm going to end my turn on that, and I'm going to hope that my opponent doesn't pull out a big old land shark eating rabbit out of his hat. Going to show the regular Yveltal, not the Yveltal EX just yet, and going to go for the Trainer's Mail. And I'm wondering what my opponent's going to go for, so I'm thinking to myself, what do I want to do? As my opponent gets a max elixir, I can tell that this is going to be a very energy heavy deck, so I need to think, how can I win quickly? By using Karina to go for another Garchomp and a rare candy, I can have all the tools I need to set up these two. In fact, I can go for Karina to get a Gabite, I can go for Karina to get a Professor's Letter. There's a whole lot of options I can do with 2 Karinas, and I've got Maxie's Hidden Ball Trick, so if I run out of cards in my hand, I can get 5 new ones. My opponent, gonna set up on the Darkrai EX, gonna get 4 cards because of Professor Birch's, and now I'm a bit more dubious than I was before. Gonna get that Professor Birch's back, which is kind of a risky play, because I could be carrying a Judge or a red card, but my opponent gonna decide to put down another Darkrai EX and attack me with the Dark Pulse. Now, this would be a problem for Gible if I didn't have the means of getting it evolved into Garchomp right away. So I'm going to put a Fighting Fury Belt onto Gible, which gives it 40 more HP and 10 more damage on its attacks. I'm going to use Karina to get another Garchomp, get a rare candy, and now it's time to unleash the beast. So the rare candy is going to come out. I'm going to evolve my active Gible, going to get my Garchomp out. If I had another energy, I could easily take down this Darkrai EX. As it stands, we're just going to have to settle for the Turbo Assault, which is going to come close, but not quite. Going to take the Fighting type energy, and I'm going to use it to set up my benched Gible instead. I have a means of taking out my opponent's active Pokemon. There's no need to put more energy onto that Garchomp just yet when it could be in a lot of danger. Setting up the second Garchomp would be way more beneficial to me. My opponent gonna play down a Drowsy, and since that's the breakpoint Drowsy, that tells me that my opponent is running some status manipulation in this deck. Gonna want to try to put me to sleep and stall me out. My opponent gonna get a new hand courtesy of Professor Birch's, and this is never an uneasy situation when you're seeing 7 new cards and your opponent is taking his time to play them. Now going to go for the Trainer's Mail, and that just increases the apprehension even further, because all it takes is one bad play and Garchomp can be stopped pretty easily. Hence, this enhanced hammer. If I didn't have this Karina in hand, I would be in a world of pain right now. My strong energy is gone, Darkrai is getting set up, it's going to unleash on Garchomp, but, like I've mentioned, because of Garchomp's relative bulk, I am going to be able to take it. Now, my plan is to use Karina. Well, first of all, my opponent actually helped me there, because I'm able to max Potion, which would normally discard all of my energy, but since my opponent did that for me, I have nothing to fear. So I'm going to use Karina to get a Gabite, which will evolve my other Gible, and Professor's Letter, which will give me the energy to attack with Garchomp again. Gible's going to get evolved, and seeing that my opponent's going to forfeit, wanting nothing to do with this strategy anymore, realizing that I have the upper hand due to type advantage. Now this opponent took his sweet time. Let me just put it that way. There are going to be more than a couple cuts in this game because, I don't know, either lag or indecision. Either way, this ended up being a longer game than I wanted it to be, and not for the reason that I wanted it to be either. Now I only get one Gible to lead off with, and my opponent gonna get that Lucario EX with the strong energy. This is, needless to say, pretty bad for me, if you couldn't tell. I am very vulnerable right now. I have no other Pokemon on the bench. I need to start getting set up, and I need to do it quickly. So I'm going to slap the strong energy onto Gible, and from here I have a number of choices. I'm going to go for the Acrobike though, which is going to let me draw another Gible, which makes me feel 100 times safer just by its presence, because now I have something on the bench if things go awry. I'm going to use my Trainer's Mill. That's going to net me a Versus Seeker, so I can play my Karina again, or I can play the Judge. Either way. So I take some surveillance of what I've got in my hand, what has been what has been prized and what has not been. I debate for a long time about what I want, and I know that's kind of hypocritical considering I was chastising my opponent earlier for taking his time. But in the end, I decide to pick Hawlucha since I have Garchomp, and I pick the rare candy because we gotta have a means of evolving it. So I play out Hawlucha, who is just generally a strong backup attacker against Pokemon EX, which Lucario EX is, so I have options against it. I'm going to toss the Judge with Gible's attack, and that's going to net me a Muscle Band and a strong energy. The strategy is starting to come together. For each strong energy I attach to Garchomp, it'll do 20 more damage. I have 2 here, that's 40. Add in Muscle Band and now I'm doing 60 more. Lucario EX will trigger Garchomp's second attack's second effect, where if it's a regular effect, where if it's a Pokemon EX, it takes 80 more damage from Garchomp's second attack. Can you see how this deck starts to take off in a big way? So, I slap the strong energy onto Gible, I slap down the Muscle Band, we use our rare candy to evolve the active Gible into Garchomp, and I'm going to go for the Versus Seeker, gonna grab Karina back, and for the most part this is just for setting up that other Garchomp, because like I said, you always want to have one in the wings. So I'm gonna go grab that one, and I'm gonna see what in my deck is prized and what's not. Turns out I don't have a lot to work with, but I do have another rare candy. I'm gonna use that rare candy to get this Gible evolved, and now I'm basically in a position to check my opponent. I'm going to use my Ultra Mega EX Killer Attack, and that's going to net me 2 prize cards as I do way too much damage to that Lucario EX. That nets me a Lysander and an Acrobike, which I'm not thrilled about. I didn't want another supporter card because I wanted to be able to play Maxie's Hidden Ball Trick, which only works if it's the last card in my hand. But having Lysander out there does give me a lot of options, as I can really mess with what my opponent's trying to set up. Having the Acrobike will give me an option to draw. My opponent deliberates for a while, finally decides on the Landorus. It's not a Pokemon EX, so naturally I want nothing to do with it. I want that Lucario, and I want to knock it out and get more prize cards. So my opponent gonna use Teammates, and gonna go looking in his deck for any 2 cards he wants. He can only use that because I just knocked out one of his Pokemon. And whenever you see that card, it should trigger some alarms, because now your victory is enabling your opponent to gain a lot more momentum. So my opponent gonna decide to start setting up on that Lucario EX, very likely unaware that I've got that Lysander. Actually, can't be aware that I have the Lysander. Thought for a second that I got it through Trainer Mail, not the fact. Now, I'm not sure which of these 2 to take at this point in the game. I do decide on Sycamore in the end because I want more cards. There's no point in having Maxie's Hidden Ball Trick, really. And I'm gonna be an absolute tool to my opponent. Gonna bring Lucario EX up to the front before he can get set up with it. Gonna knock it out. Gonna get 2 more prize cards. I end up with my Gallade and my Fighting Fury Belt. Gallade is in this deck basically to get played by Maxie's Hidden Ball Trick and to help me rearrange the top cards of my deck. The Fighting Fury Belt, again, adds bulk and damage, and putting that on my second Garchomp could make or break a game for me. My opponent gonna go with the Versus Seeker to pull back the Teammates, and that stresses me out on a level that I'm not comfortable with, because now he's gonna get even more cards from his deck, and he can get any ones he wants, which means he's pulled 4 cards directly from his deck that he needs at any given situation. So, what that means for me is that I have to play very carefully, or I could stand to lose all of this momentum that I've gained. Fortunately, my opponent doesn't really seem to have a lot, as he plays the Lugia EX and attaches a Focus Sash to it. Focus Sash in this game only works on fighting type Pokemon, so I guess that was a bit of a misplay by my opponent, or maybe just looking to thin his hand a bit. Now, I don't have another Lysander, which is very disappointing. So I'm going to start setting up on Hawlucha, put the Muscle Band onto it so it can do as much damage as possible. I'm going to Professor Sycamore away my hand. I get another Gibble, which makes me very happy, and I get Lucario EX just in case things go completely wrong. I've also got another strong energy that I can attach to the second Garchomp, so things are looking completely my way right now. I'm set up in pretty much every way possible. My opponent only has that Lugia EX left. I get one more prize. It's a Startling Megaphone, so I can get rid of any tool cards my opponent has, and at this point the game is mine to lose. My opponent gonna attach energy to Lugia EX, gonna use Tierno to get some more cards, and even though this Garchomp is gonna get knocked out, I have this other one waiting in the wings. Now actually, at the time, you're gonna see me make a mistake here. I miscounted how much HP Lugia EX had, so I didn't think I had enough damage to take it out this turn. So I go for the Startling Megaphone, which was kind of just a morale dampener, even though it wouldn't have had an effect because Lugia EX is not a fighting type. I use my Versus Seeker to go get my Karina, and in my head I had it that I was going to set up that other Gibble. My opponent evidently thinks that I am just wasting his time, decides to forfeit, and that's 3 games that I won where I managed to make my opponent quit, though that last one doesn't really count as much. So if you guys have enjoyed this episode and this new deck, then let me know with a like and a comment down below telling me just how much fun you've had, and I will be sure to go more in depth with this deck in another video. Until then, be sure to take care and have a good one. Thanks for watching, bye bye!